This video is a follow-up to my previous tutorial on how to build light maps in Source 2 Hammer without a ray tracing capable GPU. And unfortunately, it's gonna be mostly a rant video, but I'll get the technical things out of the way first. As of now, in Q1 2025, you can no longer build light maps without a GPU that has ray tracing, even when using the lightmapcpu flag, which I covered in the previous video. However, you can still make maps in Hammer, and you can still compile maps, just you're not going to have lighting. And you're also going to have this message at the top of your screen. Besides buying a new GPU, which is stupid, the best workaround is actually gonna be asking someone else to compile the map for you. Seriously, that's the best solution for the foreseeable future. I would suggest going on a site like the MapCore forums, and I'm sure there'll probably be someone there who's willing to help you compile maps. Luckily, Source 2 is designed in a way where sharing projects is usually pretty straightforward. You would just send the whole add-on folder to someone so they have all your files, and then they compile it and send the map back to you. From there, you can actually play it and post it on the workshop. And if you need to update it again, you don't need to send the full project, just any changes that were made. I'd offer to compile maps for people myself since I have a pretty decent GPU with ray tracing, but I have DSL internet because no ISP will cover my area. And I live near a major city, by the way. Thanks, Verizon. Those billions of taxpayer dollars you got are really working for us. How dare I live anywhere besides a soulless cul-de-sac housing development? It takes me over 3 hours to upload a 1 GB file, by the way. Yeah, it really sucks. Anyway, I'm sure you can find someone, or maybe you know someone with a ray tracing capable GPU who can compile maps for you. And maybe someone can figure out VMPI for Source 2 and get a GPU farm going to compile maps for people as a service. And that would be useful to everyone because even with a pretty beefy ray tracing GPU, Source 2 takes quite a long time to build the lighting. One thing to remember though is don't bug people about trying to get little test maps and things compiled over and over and over again. Get your level actually working first. Don't worry about the lights. Lighting usually is a later stage in environment art for most people anyway. And once you are ready to start working on your map's lighting, you're gonna have to rely on the non-baked lighting previews in Hammer, which are pretty good and should be good enough for most situations. There is also another really bad workaround you can do. You could technically bake your lighting first using a different Source 2 game if you really wanted to fine-tune things before sending it off to get it compiled for real. But you would still need a sick nasty CPU because even a tiny little test level like this on my 32-thread CPU still takes about 5 minutes to bake the light maps. CS2's version of Hammer currently will load maps made with other Source 2 games, but not vice versa. And it seems like they're going to be removing this feature soon too. Every other Source 2 game seems to be mostly interoperable. However, Counter-Strike 2's version of Source 2 is getting increasingly unique and incompatible. It might as well not even be Source 2 anymore, more like Source 2.5. You cannot load a current CS2 map file into Hammer in Half-Life Alyx, Sandbox, Dota 2, Steam VR, or any other Source 2 game as far as I know, because it simply refuses to read the format. This is stupid and very lame because if you go and look at each map format in ASCII mode, the file formats are very similar. It would probably be very possible for someone to reverse engineer the formats and make a back and forth converter, making it so you could open new CS2 map files in older engine versions of Hammer. Still, like I said before, you can do most of your maps lighting inside of a different game, like Half-Life Alyx, or maybe even Steam VR, which is free. Those games let you actually compile your lighting with your CPU, as Source 2 games have been able to do for over 10 years now. Hey, remember Dota 2's Source 2 tools came out in like 2014? Sandbox works too, but I'm not sure if you can actually see the compiled baked lighting in Sandbox levels right now. It's kind of weird. But let's assume you just made a sick nasty level in Alyx and the lights are looking crisp. You would then be able to open your maps file in CS2's Hammer and convert your lights to the correct types that CS2 uses. Yeah, CS2 has different names for all the light entities. Isn't that a great feature? Then you could add all the special stuff that Counter-Strike needs to make a level actually function, and then send your map off to someone to compile and actually get a map with lighting in CS2. Because again, you still need ray tracing hardware for CS2. And I'm sure you're wondering, can't you just put the compiled map that has baked lighting from Alex or Sandbox or whatever into Counter-Strike 2? Yes! For now, but it just refuses to load the lights, so the map will appear full bright anyway, as if you never compiled the lighting in the first place. Also, the test map I did with Sandbox had no world collision for some reason. Sandbox really might as well be an alternate universe version of Source 2. Maybe we'll call that one Source 2 1/4. But yeah, the whole process is kinda dumb, and once again, sometime in the future, CS2 is gonna make it so you can't even open the map files from other games in CS2's Hammer. So once that happens, let's say you've been making a cool map in Alex and the lights are perfect, and you're ready to put it into CS2, but uh-oh, the game updated, so now you can't open your Alex map now. What are you gonna do? Well, you could export the entire level as a model from Alex Hammer and re-import it as a model in CS2 Hammer, but it isn't gonna have any entities. In fact, when you export the level, it will export all of the point entities' helper models as part of the model. So you're also going to have to go through and remove a bunch of physical light bulb models and whatever other junk is floating around your map, one by one. And then you would have to manually re-add and copy all of the values for each light in the level from one game to another, by hand. And by the way, Alex's lighting with the volumetric fogging isn't necessarily the same as CS2's lighting. Oh, and the materials are different too, so you're gonna have to have multiple copies of the same materials, using different shaders for each game. But hey, at least you can run both CS2 and Alex's Hammer at the same time. So yeah, honestly, just forget about those stupid workarounds. Forget about baked lighting. Just do your lighting using the non-baked previews, which will hopefully work on a non-RTX GPU for the foreseeable future. Those are going to be good enough to tune your lighting before sending it off to someone to compile it for you. And if you're good enough at mapping, you don't even need those lighting previews. Personally, I'm so familiar with how lights act in Source that I can usually dial in the exact settings I need for the light that I'm visualizing in my mind on the first try. Just go watch my map off series and you'll see me doing this constantly. Seriously, if you're watching this still, that means you will probably like map off. Go watch it. So I spent quite a lot of time trying to figure out working workarounds for this issue. I had to do all sorts of annoying hardware changes to an old computer. I tried installing Windows on multiple machines. One thing I was certain would work, but didn't, but might if someone watching this wants to go look into it more, is using an older version of the compiler. I was able to get an old version of the compiler running, but it refused to compile the map file from the new version of CS2, because again, the map formats have changed. The only backup I had of the tools were from November 2023. I needed the entire Win64 folder for the resource compiler to work, and yes, I tried just replacing certain parts of the new version with DLLs from the old version, and it didn't work. But maybe I didn't replace the right files or something, and someone can figure that out, or maybe it can't be done. I was also unable to launch that old version of Hammer 2, so I couldn't make a map file compatible with that version of the tools. The main issue is that my backup is way too old, and I don't know the exact version of CS2 that was the last version to support baking lightmaps using the CPU. As far as I know, that last version might not even support the latest map format either, so that version's resource compiler might just refuse to compile the new maps. If someone could figure out which version is the last version of CS2 to support building lightmaps on the CPU, then you might be able to download that older version of the game and the tools, then just use that like you would before, using the lightmapcpu compiler flag. It seems like the removal of the CPU lightmap baking feature happened somewhat recently, sometime in early October 2024 from what I can tell, but I don't know. And I certainly can't download random versions of CS2 to try and figure out which one it is, but maybe one of you watching can. I've asked in the discussion page for the lighting on the developer developer wiki, so maybe someone will figure it out. And if we get really lucky, maybe that version of the game will work with the new map format, which means you should just be able to replace the files inside the game's Win64 folder with the ones from that older version, and everything would probably work just as it did before, but on the new version, at least on the resource compiler side. There's also another possibility in the future. The Source 2 compiled map format is somewhat reverse engineered already. Someone could theoretically figure out how to get the baked light maps from another game like Half-Life Alyx working in CS2 by simply modifying the compiled VPK file. There might even be a way to build the map without lighting in CS and then build the lighting in another game. Or someone might just be able to make a standalone lightmap compiler program. Who knows? But for now, I'm at my limit with this, and if there's any major developments, I'll either update the description of the video and pin a comment, or maybe I'll make an entirely new video if it's significant enough. But now, it's time for me to complain about more stuff. When I was testing this, the first thing I did was throw in a blank hard drive and install Windows on my ultimate 2010 computer, which is sick nasty, and I want to make a video about it in the future. But I just wanted to install CS and see if it was true that the Lightmaps CPU flag no longer worked. And this was after getting multiple comments on my previous video saying it was broken, but I needed to confirm. I thought, surely CS2 will run on my 2010 Phenom, right? No! It doesn't, and there's no possible workaround that I could find. That's because CS2 requires the SSE4_2 instruction set, which you would think the CPU would have, since that instruction set is way older than the Phenom series of CPUs. But I guess AMD didn't just put that special boy instruction set in, probably because literally nothing ever used it, and it probably existed solely to make Intel CPUs look faster under artificial benchmarks, as they are very well known for doing. By the way, the Phenoms were really good and were the best CPU option besides like a single bulldozer SKU before AMD came out with their Ryzen line. Seriously, AMD only ever released like 2, maybe 4 better CPUs from 2010 when my baller ass Phenom 2 X6 Black 1090T came out, till 2017 when the Ryzen 1000 series came out. Those were the dark ages for CPUs. It was bad, and Intel didn't innovate either, which is why AMD was able to annihilate them with Ryzen. But this problem isn't really that big of a deal. The Phenom really should have had that instruction set, which Intel CPUs had years before, and I'm sure I could drop in a Bulldozer CPU and maybe, possibly, run CS2. Though all that annoyance, installing Windows and Steam, I even installed my 5600 XT into the computer just to make sure CS2 would run good, all that work for nothing. Whatever, my computer is still currently, on the floor, in pieces. But this next problem, oh man. Okay, so I have a computer in my living room downstairs. The family computer, as I call it. Really, it's my old main PC. Again, I want to make a video about this one in the future, but it's got games on it, it's got decent hardware, it's got Windows 10 LTSC. I'll just install CS2 on Steam, no problem. I just remote into it over the network, install CS, which by the way, Steam is really cool because it will just transfer the files over the network automatically from my main PC, so I don't have to actually re-download CS2 every single time I install it, which would take days. So I install CS, I boot it up, it runs disgustingly well on my old RX 480 GPU. Like, I don't know how it's this smooth. It hardly even did that stuttery lockup thing that much either. But then I go to launch the developer tools and, it needs a newer version of Windows? Are you serious, bro? The map editing tools need the absolute most latest up to doot version of Windows, which by the way would require a full reinstall. The family computer is on the 2019 or maybe it's 18 version of LTSC, I don't know, whichever one came before the current one. And that version is probably the best version of Windows 10 ever made. It's rock solid, it's super stable, the UI is somewhat coherent, far better than the dumbass 2021 LTSC version I use on my main PC, which broke all kinds of stuff and changed everything. The volume menus are messed up, and it has these weird, stupid ass, ugly, stinky Windows 11 folder icons in the start menu for some dumb reason. A poop.net user did not make those icons, that's for sure. but I had to rip out way more shit from this newer version of Windows 10 LTSC than I did the previous version. And I know Windows 11 Enterprise is going to be even worse. So I'm riding this version of Windows as long as the stupid hardware vendors will support it, assuming I ever need to get a new GPU or CPU. But knowing their track record, they'll probably require me to send them a photo of my scrotum to prove that I'm up to date or something. Anyway, yeah, are you kidding me? The actual game, Counter-Strike 2, runs beautifully fine. But Hammer, the software, which ran perfectly fine on Windows 7 when I was using it for Dota 2 and Destinations back in like 2015, now suddenly needs the most latest Windows 10 version. Not just Windows 10, but the absolute newest version of it. Unreal. And it isn't just a version check issue, because I went and spoofed my Windows version numbers by editing the registry, and the message didn't pop up, but it would give me a different obscure error and crash out. Now, a lot of people love to blame Valve for literally everything. Hell, I had changed my name to Valve and no chat UI, no friends UI on Steam for the longest time when the new UI came out, because it was ass on launch and didn't let you change basic settings, but then they fixed it and made it better and more similar to the previous UI, so then I was happy. Though, let's be real, this is what Steam should look like. Or maybe this. Anyway, I'm not going to blame all of Valve for these issues. Instead, I'm going to create a fictional person. This guy is in charge of the Counter-Strike 2 tools, and he's a total asshole and idiot, and/or is on the payroll of Microsoft and obviously Nvidia as some kind of double agent spy inside of Valve. We're going to call him Derick. And for some reason, Derick thought it would be super cool to make it so making maps in Counter-Strike is extremely gatekept to only the people with the most up-to-date hardware and software. Remember, Valve's games would be shells of themselves without modability, but more importantly, the ability to be modded by some random kid on his shitty home computer. Valve is pretty much built on kids with old bad computers making stupid stuff and other things for their games. But this asshole Derick wants those kids to buy new computers with new operating systems and new graphics cards, so that way the computer hardware and software industry can keep functioning. Because in reality, if it weren't through forced obsolescence through poorly written or directly user hostile software, then most people would be able to get by with 15-plus-year-old hardware and software. And we can't have people not constantly buying new stuff or updating. The shareholders demand it. Seriously, every day people are more and more being like, wow, I can do everything I need to in Windows XP, and it's better than Windows 11. What? But this is also why it isn't really Valve's fault. They're a private company. They don't have a bunch of baby boomers in suits demanding they pillage their customers to make an extra penny. No, they just have one asshole, Derick, who probably didn't even lock out older versions of Windows intentionally. He probably just compiled the software using whatever new C++ compiler micro shit or Intel puts out, which forces the software to use some obscure Win32 API calls that didn't exist in older versions just as a way to make you update. And they do this all the time, by the way. Did you know the campaign in the Master Chief Collection on PC will soft lock you from beating the game if you don't have a specific Windows update installed? The game runs fine, but I guess you need a Windows update to make one UI dialogue in the game appear halfway through the damn game. UPDOOTERS are the worst, bro. Never update your software and never buy new hardware unless it is absolutely required, and even then, never throw away your old stuff because it will always be useful to someone for some reason. I've been using the same phone for the last 8 years on iOS 10, and I am only just now getting a new phone simply because my service provider is shitting the bed. The entire tech industry revolves around trying to make it harder to do things with older hardware and software. They have no respect for backwards compatibility. They don't actually innovate anymore. They just make it worse and worse and force normal people to take it. Like, I can't imagine how normal people can use Windows 11, and they all hate it, every single one I talk to, and I'm talking to them a lot. Like, unfortunately, I made a name for myself as, hey, that kid knows how to use the computer, I'll get him to plug in my printer, to apparently everyone in my extended family, and to everyone that they know, and somehow I always do manage to fix their problem, but I just kind of click buttons and look around. You know, basic problem-solving capability goes quite a long way. But then there are these people who are either being paid to shill for massive companies, usually funded by US taxpayer money, by the way, or they just do it for free, consensually. Never listen to these updooter freaks. I'm sure these people will be in the comments of this video saying to updo because they just can't help themselves. It's like telling a bee not to make honey. They can't not do it. Like if you look up the main topic of this video, how to bake light maps on your CPU in CS2, you'll get a bunch of results with constant passive aggressive shit from these updooter freaks. Stuff like, you don't have a new GPU, so get a new hobby. Try playing Roblox. These are the worst people. Seriously, don't even get me started. So many games owe their existence to the fact that some kid got inspired making levels for Half-Life or Counter-Strike or Quake or Doom, or from playing on servers running goofy custom maps. Do you have any idea how many people working as game developers today got started because of Source Engine modding? A lot. And before Source, it was Gold Source, and before that it was Quake, and before that it was Doom, and before computer games existed, people just made little models of cities and train sets and stuff like that. Modding created the video game industry, and Valve is one of the main beneficiaries of game modding. The fact that you can run the game, but you can't run Hammer Editor is absolutely ridiculous. It's not like Source 2 Hammer has changed at all, really, since it became publicly available like 10 years ago. I'm sure Derick just pressed the wrong button again. Oh, the technology is so new. It's a brand new game. Shut up. Counter-Strike 2 has tools that come with it, which require Python 2.7, which was pretty much deprecated before Source 2 even existed. And look, I get it. I couldn't imagine trying to compile Source 2 lightmaps on a CPU for a huge level. It would take ages, though I'm not quite sure why it would take so long, because really CPU lightmap baking in Source is pretty quick on modern hardware. I guess Source 2 just forces you to use some insanely computationally expensive bullshit that takes forever because it maybe looks slightly better in some situations than the baked lighting in a game from 2003. Like, I would love ray tracing lightmap baking support for other Source 2 games like Sandbox, or even just GPU accelerated baking. It doesn't even have to use the stupid new RTX dedicated hardware shit. And we all know 10 years from now, probably nothing is gonna have RTX anyway. It'll just be another forgotten worthless thing like PhysX, because GPUs will just evolve to ray trace without whatever current systems are in use now. Don't listen to the anti-American Canadian agents like Linus Tech Tip who claim ray tracing is required. Did you know Mirror's Edge runs better on a GTX 580 than it does on an RTX 5080? All because the latest GPUs don't work with PhysX. Ha ha! So anyway, to get around the Windows version requirement, I just imaged the drive from my main computer onto another drive, booted it up on the family PC, installed Counter-Strike, and then installed AMD graphics drivers, which I actually hate. Seriously, at least with my NVIDIA card, I can, as of now, choose not to install GeForce Experience and all that bloat botnet shit, and then I can use the superior control panel settings. But with AMD, it is only gamer drivers with constant notifications and shit running in the background that you have to manually spoof and remove if you don't always want it always on like a little rat in your machine. Disgusting. So Counter-Strike ran fine on the computer now, and that is what I was finally able to test building light maps on, which of course didn't work no matter what I tried, and that really sucks. But on the bright side, if you can run Hammer, you can still make maps without lighting, even if you don't have the latest graphics crap. I don't even know what cheap ray tracing capable GPU I'd recommend. The 2060 is still kinda pricey for something that old, and it's not really that good. And by the way, I don't actually know and have no way to confirm if non-NVIDIA cards even work for baking light maps. Allegedly they do, and should. What about the Intel Arc cards? Those are pretty affordable and apparently very good, but does Counter-Strike 2's Hammer recognize that they can ray trace? Does it recognize AMD's ray tracing cards? I don't know. I do know some older NVIDIA RTX cards don't even work though, so let me know in the comments below if you know. But I guess that's enough unhinged ranting for now. Like all of my rant videos, I do shoutouts at the end. Shout out to Anhedonia and Winner Atwin, who were the only two people to find the secret word in the last rant video. If you want a shout out in my next unhinged rant video, which might take months, the last one was in November, the political text messages video, which, by the way, I still get this political spam, but now the tone of the messages is slightly more violent sounding. What's going on, Obama? But just post a comment within a week or two after this video goes live that contains the secret word, and you will get a shout out at the end. Maybe try to hide the secret word in your comment. But what is the secret word? Well, it's hidden somewhere on screen during this video. I hope you were paying attention. If you don't want to do that, you can always just pay to win. If you join YouTube channel members at the Epic tier, your name gets added to the credits of the videos. And if you join the Elite tier, I read your name during the credits of your videos. And I'm talking normal videos too, not just these arbitrarily defined rant videos I occasionally make. It isn't just YouTube members either. I also have a Patreon, a Ko-Fi, a Subscribestar. I'm probably on something else I'm forgetting, but all of those have the same tier memberships with the same benefits. I'm just on all of those to make it more convenient for you and as backups. I think I prefer Ko-Fi or YouTube because I actually get the money from those. I'm not sure about the others yet, mainly because no one's on them yet, so I don't know how the payment system works with them. But yeah, go join members somewhere or just donate straight up on Ko-Fi or read the donate page on my website if you're epic and cool and stylish and good looking. But anyway, I'll be back next week with a brand new video.